Welcome to another episode of Production Pod. I'm your host, the one and only Marquell Byrd, and this is a podcast where we interview experts and we also actually interview people who are producing things. So it's not just focused on solely production itself, but people who are actually doing things in this world. And today I wanted to actually talk about how I actually got into production and I actually started making a living and really, just really going after something that I truly wanted. So I'm from Virginia, born and raised DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia. Shouts out to my uncle, Rasan, who really was a huge staple in our family in terms of the introduction to go-go, right? And he would produce and create different shows, whether it be Backyard Band, What Band, TCB at the time, Raw Image, CCB, all of those bands, and they would perform. And even out to my cousins, they had a band called First Impression Band. And when I was younger, I wanted to be them. I was like, I wanted to be like Smoke on the Congos. I wanted to really, go hard and go in. And it just, for whatever reason, one day I was in the crowd and I looked up and I said, man, I want to be just like that. And I think at the time it was Love. Love was playing the Congos and he did it backwards. He's like left-handed. And I was like, man, that's so dope because it was his own style. So my grandfather also played the Congos in church and things like that, who introduced my uncles and everything, even out to, my aunts who would sing in the church, all this stuff. But I counted one day. So I started a little band and it wasn't working out. Little go-go band. We would play in the garage, at my grandmother's garage. And one day I counted and I said, man, look at all of these people in middle school. And I said, who's getting paid? No lie. I was like, who's getting paid? Maybe they just love it. But I'm like, it's like 10 people up there. I don't know who's walking away with anything. And then my cousin at the time, Daryl, he was DJing. He was like, he went to New York. He was so spoiled. He would go back and forth to New York and he would always bring back records and turntables, like Techniques, you name it, he had it, And I said, man, I want to DJ because I didn't have to think about whether or not somebody else was going to show up. The keyboardist was going to show up, if the front line was going to show up, if the drummer going to show up. I didn't have to think about that, right? And so I started DJing all of the parties. Everybody knew. The first thing I ever had was some Stanton Straight 20s, right? I'm like DJing, doing my thing. Belt drive, straight 20s, throwing the record forward. As you know, any DJ knows you got to throw the record forward in order for it to catch up. Dual drives is exactly. So if you let go of the turntable, it'll catch up in time, the speed in terms of. And I was doing that. My first record was Big Timers. It was, and I would throw the record back, Big Timers, boom, boom. And I was scratched. And I thought I was doing something. And I was doing weddings and everybody in DC, Maryland, Virginia area, I was getting booked. And I was making a little money. But my home situation was just so unstable that I didn't have the rides to get to the shows. I didn't have the access or the opportunity to really stay grounded because I went to 4 different high schools. But however, it ended up working in my favor because all the times that we moved, everything that, that was all God's purpose as well. And my last year, and some people may not even be able to do that, my last year of high school, shouts out to my sister, she actually allowed me to stay in her home for free, right? So I moved in with her. I lived with my auntie over the summer. Before that, I was living with my grandmothers. Before that, I was living with my mom. Before that, I was living with my auntie. So it just kept on happening. But my last year of high school, I was going into summer school. No, it was summer. live with my aunt, and she wanted me to live in Stafford. And I said, no, I can't do it. I just refuse to live in that part of Virginia, like going to that school. I was like, it's not going to work. So I went to Garfield High, right? You know, my alumni. Hello. '09. And I was working at Sheetz. I had a Crown Victoria that my cousin sold me. My cousin Eagle, he was like, yo, I'm going to sell it to you next to nothing. I owed him like $600. He's like, yo, don't even worry about it. Don't even pay me back. Don't worry about it at all. Like, listen, man, it's yours. It's your car. Like, and it was my dream car at the time. And I just lived with my sister and my brother-in-law, and they was kind of like taking care of me because I would come home to dinner and all that other stuff. And they bought me my first MPC 2000. So I had my floppy disk drives in the living room, and I was trying to make beats. And then she's about to get kicked out. All the money that she was giving the person, just they weren't paying the rent. So after they decided not to pay the rent, I ended up moving with my boy Rodney. Right? Literally, that's how we say his name, my boy Rodney. So I moved in with him because my sister was getting kicked out. And I'm like, yo, I still got to finish school. So it's my last year. So then I went to the Coast Guard first. I went to the Army, and I failed my ASVAB. Just failed it miserably. And God was like, look, you can stay here, go to hell or go to jail. And I was like, dang, I don't want to go to either one of those places. So what should I do? So I decided to take it upon myself. I said, you know what? I'll pursue my dreams. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to move back to Virginia. So the dream was still to work in music. I just didn't know what. So I sold my car to my brother-in-law. He was like, yo, that's a dope car. You know, you took care of it. You know, you always got the oil change, all that stuff. It's a great car. I'm going to buy it from you, but I'm only giving you half. I said, okay, cool. So I moved to New York City, one of the greatest cities in the world. My uncle Rasan, the same person I had mentioned earlier, he had a child with a young lady named Tasha Price. And she said, hey, if you want to come out here, take the bus, visit, and you can live here, but you got to pay me rent. I'm like, oh my God, rent, that's a thing. I'm like, Jesus, even when I lived with my boy Rodney, I didn't have to freaking pay nothing. So I gave him my TV out of my car. I had a TV. I just gave it to him because I was like, yo, I lived here for free. That's the least I could do. And my sister, I just told her thanks. Deuces. You know, she loves me. Right? When that happens, my uncle Corey, who people thought, still to this day, which is weird, that was my pops, because my pops was in and out. You know how that go, right? So he would be at all my football games. He was very present in my life. He takes me in a U-Haul truck, a one-way U-Haul truck, to New York, to my aunt's house, right? So now I'm living in the basement of Rosedale, Queens, and then something else happens. The same thing that my sister was doing. Yo, my aunt's paying rent and the person's not paying the mortgage. Insane. So what do we have to do? We move to the Bronx, Gun Hill Road. Crazy. I'm still out there like, yo, what am I doing here? What am I going to do? I was going to go to Queens Community College, but there were so many women. And I was like, yo, I'm going to get somebody pregnant. Oh my God. Like, these women are beautiful. Yo, ain't nothing like a Brooklyn girl. Ain't nothing like a Queens girl. Jesus. I was like, yo, I got it. There's no way I can go to this school. So I ended up at the Institute of Audio Research right there on University Place in the Village. And it was the dopest experience. It was rappers, it was producers, it was writers, it was singers, you name it. I was in it. And everybody was like, yo, what studio are you going to work at? What are you going to do when you get out of here? And I'm like, yo, I'm going to build my studio. And I did. So I teamed up with this guy. His name was Changa. I teamed up with him. He built the studio and I helped him build it a little bit. But he was the first person I ever met that like did IAR and was like, yo, I'm going to build a studio. And he actually did it in Long Island City, as a matter of fact, right? Take the 7 train. So I was going to LaGuardia Community College because They had an articulation program set up with IAR. So I'm like, yo, perfect. And at this time, I'm extremely depression. Like, I'm suicidal. You think like I'm like there. I'm going through it, trying to figure out how I'm going to survive. And God was like, yo, I got you. Don't worry. Right. And then we'll get into, my depression another episode. Right. But I lived through it. I survived through that situation. And I'm going to this school and I'm like, yo, what am I going to do? I got to build my own studio. Like, this isn't working. Like, with the studio I was at, I'm like, yo, I got to build my own studio. So I started working for a nonprofit organization called Street Corner Resources. And I helped them build the very first recording studio. Actually, the expansion of their current studio. They had a recording studio, but I helped them build a big studio in a high school, right there in Harlem on 128th between 5th and Madison, Harlem Renaissance High School. And I'm like, yo, I was literally contracted on the job. I was there. They also hired me as a computer tech, all this great stuff. So I'm in production. I'm like, yo, I'm teaching kids the importance of music recording technology. I'm working at LaGuardia Community College on the side, with Mark Brooks. And I'm like just in this world of education, music, technology, recording. And then I started working, interning at a spot in Long Island. It was this dope producer at the time. And I'm like, yo, let's do something. We had a falling out. It didn't work. And I built a dope studio in Brooklyn. And I'm like, yo, this is it. Like, it was Mixed by Mark Studios. And this is when I first knew. I kind of knew that. I'm giving you a quick tutorial of how I really got in production. But, or overview, I'm sorry. But, production is just a part of me. It was just something that I just loved. And a lot of it was audio production. It necessarily wasn't film. And I got into film because of Eddie Marino. Eddie, he was like, yo, pick up a camera. If you want to do some stuff, man, you into audio, that's cool, but you should pick up a camera and document it. You should be able to do some photography, do these things. So I, through that, kind of gave birth to the Variety Group. I would always say the Variety Group, but I didn't know exactly what that meant. So photography, videography, and audiography. So I just wanted to really capture a in-house production company where you could come and you can knock out stuff. But I gave so much to audio recording. And, I had this studio and it was not doing well. I was horrible at marketing. I didn't even understand it. I didn't know what that meant for a product. And then you also survey the, market sizing, surveying your area. I didn't know about any of those things. I just knew I'm going to create a business and that sounds great. And it's you don't understand business, but you just have to throw yourself out there, right? Especially in production. You got to pick up the camera. You got to hit record and then you have to post it. So there were so many little areas that I kept learning. But one thing that I got to do was I interned at Stadium Red and I got to meet some amazing producers and engineers like Mesta Bish, Mesta Bish worked at Insta IR, but Ariel Borja, Ricardo Gutierrez, Omen, the producer, again, it was Just Lay Studio. So I'm meeting all of these different people. It's the first time I met Guru. All of these dope people at this space. And then that didn't work out. And I was like, God, what the crap, man? This is whack. I'm interning here and then this is not working. But it was all love, especially the Ariel. Mixed by Ariel is one of the greatest people I've met. No lie. Him, Ricardo, those are just really great people, right? Especially his wife, Juliet. And then Noah was even cooler than, we're not going to get into this, right? And then, so I just kept working in production, and I kept hitting walls. And I'm like, yo, what's happening next? Technology keeps increasing. So audio keeps changing. Producers are also the engineers are also the producers now. You know what I'm saying? So then all this stuff with auto-tune and T-Pain, I went through all of these things, trying to capture the essence of sound, right? Chasing sound, that whole that whole vibe. And it was a lot. It was a lot, and it still is a lot. And now everyone is doing podcasting, and now AI is now doing your podcast. So it's just a lot. But you still have to pick up the camera. You still have to make sure the audio is good. You still have to make sure that you post it. And I'm still in this space of production. And now with this new company that I'm building with Eric Fair, I'm really, really, really excited for what's coming, what we're doing, what we're producing. And I think it'll give the people the opportunity to also know that it doesn't really matter regardless of where your history is in production. Just keep going. Just don't stop. Like, there's so many hiccups that you're going to go through. You're going to get the gigs sometimes. You're not going to get the gigs sometimes. I met an actor earlier and she was like, yeah, I do this, but I act, but now my love is with the kids to teach them how to do it. It's like you'll find your niche, and in production, producing something, creating something, it's so much bigger than what we could ever imagine. So I think even when we go back to God, understanding that, God created, God produced, like that's what happened. When we think about Jesus produced miracles. So let's continue to produce. Let's continue to follow what God puts on our hearts, our purpose, all of those things. And you'll be surprised, like, how many amazing things you're able to create. And especially if you pick up that camera and you just hit record, or if you pick up that pen and you write something, you never know what can happen. And for me, to anyone, like from New York to LA, me walking in the studios, lying to walk in studios. I have a session. I've done those things. Like, literally, I've told the freaking record label, I had a meeting today. And I got to the second or third floor. Like, they put me up there. Like, I've done those things just so I can pursue, and get closer to what not just my dream is, but the purpose God has given me, So continue to produce, continue to do these things. I promise you, it's going to work out. Again, this was another episode of Production Pod, and I'm sure there are so many things I'm leaving out. Literally, I recorded most of El Varner's last album, leaving all the good stuff out, right? But it's all good. I'm telling you. And most importantly, R.I.P. Jimmy Varner, forever. Forever. R.I.P. Thank you again. This has been an amazing episode of Production Pod. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Peace.